Um, Next item, agenda item 14. Who's doing that? Harry.
I'll be very quick as well, I would hope. This is a requirement that we need to submit to the board which is dealing with casino applications, agreement in principle that we would approve a casino as being part of the Alexandra Palace development. This is for a small casino, which is described in paragraph 7.4, and again you should bear in mind at 7.3 that there's a limited number of casinos of various sizes where approval will be given by the board. So our indicating at this stage an expression of interest in terms of this means that it may not happen after all. Any application that is made subsequently will be dealt with under the existing procedures, and that will involve consultation on this and the other activities which will form part of Alexandra Palace in the future.
Questions? Turkey?
Yeah, I mean, I know that we received this quite late in the day, and I just want to ask just a couple of quick questions about it. I mean, it's, you know, there's a proposal to have 80 category gaming machines, a maximum jackpot of £4,000 and all the rest of it. And I just want to ask the lead member whether they've considered any other sort of issues in terms of supporting this move to take this plan forward, and refer it to, I think, the relevant government department, I think, with the recommendation. Sorry, I think what we're doing is are we actually suggesting that we recommend it and it goes forward to the Secretary of State? Is that what you're suggesting? That's the first part.
The reason why we have to do this is there's a time limit, 31st of March, for us to put this expression forward to the Secretary of State, or to the board that's dealing with these applications. So we've got no option but to press ahead, make a decision in principle at this point, and to submit that to the casino board.
I mean, I just want to continue on that theme. Is it seen as essential to the bid from Firoka that this go forward? One of my issues of concern is around sort of crime and community safety, the promotion of gambling, and those sorts of things. And I wonder what consultations and discussions the lead member has about that. And also one final point, which is about securing sort of elements of public access to the palace. Presumably, it won't be necessarily be free access. It will further restrict public access to that facility. But accepting, obviously, there are other benefits from the Firoka bid.
I think there's 3 points in answer to that. First of all, we did have a presentation from Firoka in terms of their plans for the palace, and clearly, I don't think that there was any serious objections, in the sense that it did indicate quite clearly that they intended to press ahead with a casino as part of the development. Secondly, then anything that will happen at Ali Pali will be subject to a full planning application, in which those points that you've raised will have to be taken into account in respect to this particular aspect of the development concerns. And thirdly, then all the proposals, including this one, will be subject to full consultation.
Of submitting the specific information in terms of social impact of the casino, when are we planning to do that?
What we've done, which I think is the proper way to deal with this, is that we haven't highlighted the benefits of the casino. We've highlighted the benefits of the development of Alexandra Palace as a whole, part of which will be a casino.
It says at 8.1 that the specific information has been, is asked for in terms of authorities making proposals to submit evidence information under each of the following headings. But I mean, I'm happy to take your answer outside of this meeting, because obviously it's a complex issue.
Again, the response is again indicated in the paper itself. It goes into the way in which we intend to respond to this as far as this application being put in.
Yes, I mean, just interested in the responses to Kathy's questions, and I know Milgan asked me about this before she left, because I think she had some concerns, I suspect, around the crime and community safety issues as well. I suppose my first one was, I can see that the deadline is the 31st of March. When did we know that this was likely to have to go in by that deadline? Because I suppose I have some concerns that we haven't had more of an opportunity to discuss the sort of detail. And secondly, I suppose more specifically on the gaming machines, is that something where we can kind of later on limit the number, or once the permission is given, is that out of our hands?
2 points. The proposals were made available it says there under paragraph 6, the 31st of January is when the circular came, in terms of asking for these expressions to be submitted by the 31st of March. My only explanation for this is that I think it was a question of whether or not this should have been something which the board should have presented, or whether this was something which we as the council should present, and that's what's caused the delay. The detail of what will be part of the proposal will be subject, as I keep saying, to consultation and to whatever restrictions, requirements will be placed there as part of the planning process. So we will have that opportunity. And again, let me stress again that it's not a done deal, and there's every chance, depending on the number of submissions that are made for this category of casino, there will only be 8 in the country as a whole, that we can't be at all sure of this being something which will be accepted in the final analysis.
Sorry. The recommendation that you have here is to have the Chief Executive in consultation with the Leader of the Council to submit the detailed proposal. Can we ask the Leader then to undertake to do the kind of social impact assessment that we've been talking about earlier, to make sure that that is done and is part of this?
Let me be, again, trying to be as clear as I can. All we're doing, essentially, is showing an expression of interest, saying that we would look at this, and in principle, we see no difficulty with it. That is subject, one, to full consultation, and second, to detailed application being put forward, at which we'll be able to talk in terms of the impact that this type of activity at Alexandra Palace could be fully dealt with.
Thanks, Leader. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make the Leaders' Conference on Alexandra Palace because I had a clash of meetings, but certainly from speaking to colleagues that did attend, I didn't realise that at that meeting, casinos and the possibility of a casino being placed at Alexandra Palace was discussed in any great detail. Certainly, when I spoke to colleagues about what I'd missed at the meeting, that didn't crop up. But I will take your word for it that it was presented and fully discussed, and I'm not doubting you whatsoever there, Harry. My concern is on the consultation, really. If you look at 9.1, which says there's been relatively little time to consult, and then if you compare that to the comments of the AD of Environmental Services Enforcement, which says that evidence of willingness to licence, one of the points there is about details of any local consultations. I don't know how we can provide details of any local consultations if we've not done any local consultations. And just as a side, if you look at 16.2, I'm not quite sure how a comment such as that actually got through into this council. Personally, I find it quite offensive, and I'm sure my black and minority ethnic colleagues and those who live in socially excluded neighbourhoods like myself are also probably offended by that comment, to be honest. I'm sure it could have been phrased more tactfully, but maybe you want to explain to me the equality implications and why such an impact would be a particular benefit to black and minority ethnic communities and socially excluded neighbourhoods.
The last point first. I
would have thought we would lots of money that they didn't have and make them more socially excluded.
Yeah. Well, let's not get into the discussion of whether or not gambling is a good or bad thing. The issue of the comment, sir, I would agree totally with you, it's totally inappropriate, and we need to take that back. It's not good enough to effectively just come up with a statement which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. If these implications have got to be drawn out, then they've got to be drawn out as a serious point that would seek to influence any decision that is taken. This has been done without any thought whatsoever. The issue about putting forward this application is that there would not have been time, even if we'd reacted to this earlier, to embark on full-scale consultation on this. I keep saying that the consultation will take place once we've put in this expression of interest, and we will deal with the practical points at that stage. And did you want to come in?
Can I just clarify, the consultation that the Assistant Director of Enforcement is speaking about is actually about a separate part of the process, which actually will be the application for the licence for the gaming, and that will require full consultation. And what he's actually setting out there is the stage that once this council has agreed its gaming policy, then should they be given the go-ahead to be able to apply by ODPM, then they would still have to satisfy this council in its licensing function that it was appropriate to hold a gaming licence.
We have to provide this indication as an authority that we would be satisfied to proceed for an application to be made for a casino as part of the Alipari redevelopment. And as Anne has just explained, that will be subject to due process and the procedures which we'd have to apply for an application of this type to be made by the developers themselves.
George?
I mean, I was present at the Leaders' Conference on Alipali, and I just cannot recollect anywhere during the presentation and discussions about casino, but if you can tell me where it said they would locate the casino, then that might actually remind me. And I'm a bit surprised that I can't remember, because I was very involved as the leader of the council when a large casino was being envisaged in discussions, so the sort of thing you sort of sticks in your mind. But maybe if Harry, you could say, look, this is where it was. I suppose the other lesson from that is that when you have presentations, it might be helpful to have a handout as well, because then you can relate back to what the handout said. And there wasn't, if I remember correctly, there wasn't a handout that night. And so I'm at a loss to why it suddenly appears here in the context of having had the presentation a couple of weeks ago, and when this, say, maybe I'm totally wrong, in which case I'm losing it, and maybe it's time to move on. But the people in this authority know that my memory is reasonably good about these sorts of things. These sorts of things, and well, maybe that's true. These sorts of things, and I just wonder why it didn't come up. I would be really very worried if, to be perfectly frank, Leader, if as a result of, I mean, if everybody says that there was a presentation, this was mentioned in the presentation, then I will live with that, because I accept that I may be wrong, but I just can't remember it.
Yeah, What I did do, once this became apparent that this had to be dealt with within the time scale involved, is that I checked with Richard, who took the notes of the Leaders' Conference that night, both to confirm that the issue of the casino had been part of the presentation, which it was. It fits in on the right-hand side, George, as you look towards the palace itself. And again, I made absolutely clear about whether or not there was any question or any objection raised once that had been part of that presentation, and the answer to that was no. So I'm quite satisfied that the issue was there. The issue was there to be taken up. It wasn't taken up, and so therefore the situation that we have is that we're having to deal with this because of the way in which the time scale has brought us on to get this interest being submitted by the 31st of March.
I just asked the officer that was present at the Leaders' Conference, who's present here, Richard Burbidge, to comment on that aspect first.
Chair, I can confirm that in the plans submitted by Firoka, which were circulated to all members of the council with the papers for the Leaders' Conference, there is shown in those plans a casino area within the plans. I can also confirm, as Councillor Lister has said, that the issue was not specifically raised or questions mentioned during the course of the presentation or any time in the Leaders' Conference.
Harry, did you specifically raise it so that colleagues were aware of the fact that there was a casino in the proposal?
To be absolutely honest, this didn't become an issue for me until it was made clear that this proposal had to be put tonight because of the timescales involved, and that's why I checked in the sense that my recollection, having chaired that leaders' conference, was that the casino had been shown as part of the proposals, and no objection had been raised at that time.
Taki, and then
comment. Thank you, Chair. Just briefly on this one. I mean, there are always benefits and disbenefits to schemes like this, and I think what I am concerned about is that it does get the council's seal of approval by default, if you like. I would like to see some treatment of the social impact of gambling, particularly in a socioeconomic profile of our borough. I think you'll find a lot of gambling research identifies the fact that the poorer the borough, the more the likelihood that there is an increase in gambling as a percentage of disposable income. So I am a little bit concerned about it. But being the pragmatist and being the person that wants to improve the borough and welcome generally the bid, I think we should find some mechanism of not necessarily accepting the report tonight, but asking for some further work to be done and to be circulated to us, such that we can be satisfied that we have treated the issue of the social impact of gambling. Because what I wouldn't want to do is to give this executive's seal of approval to something that we have not necessarily given our full consideration of, just because it's not necessarily outlined in the report. And I accept, the lead member's discussion of the pressures on the timescale, and I understand that. My final question, and so I've made a proposal about delaying this report. I want that proposal to be on the table. And if we need to have an emergency executive, let's have an emergency executive on this issue. My final question is about whether this is essential to the bid. And just to confirm also, I was also out on political business in my ward, which is why I was late to this presentation.
I'll bring the Chief Executive in at this stage and then...
Thank you very much, Leader. I think it might just be helpful that perhaps there's a slight degree of confusion because of the wording. My understanding is that what is required is for us to make clear that we have an expression of interest, and to do that before the 31st of March. And I think where the confusion may come is that in the recommendations it says a detailed proposal. What we need to indicate to DCMS is that within the large planning of the development that there is an allocation for a small casino. Not actually the detailed proposals of how that would be managed or what it would entail. We couldn't do that by the 31st of March. And that what Councillor Lister is saying is that, having expressed our view that it was in the proposal in principle, we would then be asked to have a full consultation, which would allow for the issues that you have raised about whether you wish to, you don't have to rush to a decision now, whether you wish to have a social impact, whether you want to discuss in detail how that area, which is designated in the plans, and I think it is true that it has been designated in the plans from day one, whether you feel that you have discussed it in full is a separate issue. So I think where you might slightly become unstuck is if you do not decide in principle to convey that to the DCMS by the 31st of March. That may be against what your partners have understood you as to be willing to do. That would be my broad advice.
Good.
Leader, quite frankly, I think this is a really sloppy report. There's mistakes in it. That, for example, DC little f. 16.2 somehow has managed to slip through. We've got comments from the Assistant Director of Enforcement about what needs to be done, which isn't in relation to the decision that we're trying to make this evening. The recommendations asking us to agree a detailed proposal when the Chief Executive is telling us that it isn't actually a detailed proposal. And quite frankly, I don't feel that I can give my support. I'm really sorry about this, Harry, but I don't feel, on the basis of what's put before me this evening, and bearing in mind that it was a late submitted paper in the first place, I can't make an informed decision based on this information that's in front of me this evening.
Councillor Hare.
I was going to mention, I was going to actually I was going to ask the lead member, executive member, at what stage issues such as maximum size, number of gaming machines maximum, whether or not it's a permanent permission, and restrictions on access, open access by the public, and restrictions on signage, that sort of thing, at what stage those details can be discussed or considered. Thank you.
Again, I'll repeat what's already been said by Anne earlier. That will be done through the process of seeking a licence for this casino if it's given approval nationally to go ahead.
So Taki asked a quite important question earlier, which, I mean, I'm unhappy for the same reasons as Kate, but I don't want the whole bid to fall. So what I need to know is the crucial question. If we say no to this now and miss the deadline, does that mean that the whole kind of package is put in jeopardy? Because I think we do need to know that one way or the other. So that's one question. And then secondly, whether there is an opportunity. I'm still confused about whether we're being asked just to put in an expression of interest, which I'd be kind of happy to do in a kind of general expression of interest kind of way, or whether we're being asked for something rather more than that, which is really what I think this is saying, and I'd welcome clarification.
I think it is central to what's been proposed as far as the developer is concerned, and again that's the reason why it's been part of the proposals from day one. I think that what you should do is, if you look at 7.5, which I think is a better way to express this, is that you're then talking about the number of expressions of interest that have already been put in by local authorities when the town school involved. And so that's what it is, essentially, at this moment in time. We're saying that we're not throwing up the barrier, we're not saying no, essentially in principle, to this type of development. We're saying, yes, we will consider it and make it subject to due process and due consultation.
If we're saying that this is central to the proposal, then are we therefore saying that the whole package should be in jeopardy if we don't agree this? Are we therefore not saying that for the whole package to be developed in the end, then the casino needs to be agreed at some stage by this council? Because that's the feeling I'm getting. If you're saying that even this stage is putting the whole package in jeopardy, if it gets further down the line and people say no, as the licensing committee does have a right to do, then will that mean that we're only going to be further down the line and the whole package falls apart and we'll be back to stage one? So that's what it sounds like you're saying to me this evening.
Let's put this in its proper perspective, take it through the stages that need to be gone through. First of all, the casino element of the package which has been put forward has been there, has been part of it. It's something which has been as we've said there from day one. Second is that we can make a decision tonight, and that's to say that we will not support that as part of that package. Therefore, we will take that responsibility on in terms of saying to the developer, yes, you can go ahead, but without a casino. We've not given them that indication up till now. It's only when we've been forced into this situation of having to make an expression of interest by the end of the month that it's come to this point. The next stage is that this will be put in. There is no guarantee whether we'll get past that stage, in the sense we may be told that thanks for your expression of interest, but you're not going to have a casino, a small casino even, in the London Borough of Haringey. That's how the decision will be made, essentially. So we can't guarantee that. What we can say is that we're giving the government the responsibility for making that decision, not us. If they say, yes, you can have a small casino, then it will be subject to the local stages in terms of it being granted a licence, at which all the points of concern that people have raised, whether it's social or physical, will be taken on board at that point. And so will happen the consultation that will be required in reaching a decision eventually on whether or not to grant a licence. And if we find then that because of the problems which are associated with this, that we can't grant a licence, then fine, that's the decision we'll have to take.
My understanding of the whole of this project doesn't depend on a casino, because it would be quite cuckoo-land to say we're going to allow a proposal to go forward, which we've got no control over the Secretary of State deciding yes or no, and so therefore the whole thing falls apart. The whole thing, well, that's what was said. No, but that's what was said, that the whole scheme, that's what I heard the leader say and others say, that's the whole scheme depends on it, and so therefore it's a nonsensical position to say that, because clearly you're saying we're going to negotiate with the developer, and I happen to believe the proposals are quite sound and good overall, but you cannot have a position to say we're going to negotiate with the developer and therefore one element of the whole scheme falls apart, which we have got no control whatsoever over because it's a Secretary of State. Now, clearly that would be a nonsensical position to actually be in. My recollection of the Leaders' Conference was that, and this is why I think I and others are feeling concerned, is that all of the stuff at the Leaders' Conference and the whole proposal was delegated to the board to actually deal with it. There was no word at that meeting that the executive needed to take any action. And therefore, this is why it's a concern to me that it suddenly appears on an executive at the very last minute as to why is the council on this particular part of the project have to make a view. Why is the executive going to make a view? We're not asked to make any views about the rest of the proposal because they've all been delegated by the Leaders' Conference to the board, which is where we're told that all the power rests. We haven't got any. And we asked that question, we were told at the board, at the thing we didn't. It was down to the board to make those decisions. So why is it this part of the element's been pulled out? Because this executive, because the executive has no role in licensing, none whatsoever. The law is very clear. The licensing is a different non-executive function. It's an issue to be dealt with by licensing and everything else. So I'm at a loss to understand why in this proposal we have been getting lots of different messages. One is that the whole proposal falls apart unless this is agreed, and frankly that's quite critical because otherwise it's not sound, because you can't say we can negotiate with something on the basis that the Secretary of State might decide or might not decide, because Harry's right, the Secretary could say Haringey isn't going to have this casino. And as I say, I'm finding why the executive has just been asked to deal with this particular element when the Leaders' Conference delegated all authorities, I understood it to remember, to the board. Now why can't the board have dealt with this particular issue as well? Why is it suddenly the executive a little bit of this function but not,
okay,
not
George,
the rest of it?
George, I think you've made the point. I think if Harry comes in and then I'll bring the lawyers in just to clarify that point. And I think the situation is that the council is the licensing authority, so it is not the Ali Pali, but neither is the executive. But I think the executive has to submit, agree to submit to the CMS. But let's bring in the lawyers if this can be dealt with. If not, then we'll seek clarification.
Yinka or Legal Services. You're correct, Leader. It is for the executive to decide whether or not the expression of interest is going to be put to the CMS rather than the licensing subcommittee, which is the licensing subcommittee of the executive, even though it's a quasi-judicial function.
Okay. Now we've had the debate. Can we agree to submit an in-principle application to for a small casino at Ali Pali, subject obvious by the 31st of this month? Okay, that's 3, 4, 3. Okay, that's 4. You don't need to. You had the opportunity to speak, George. Okay. When? Okay. And that is a no. Yeah. All right. Okay. So, what is the situation in terms of this bid not going into the DCMS in terms of the whole package, the worst case scenario?
It means that the developer can no longer consider a casino as part of the development because he will not be able to make an application to the board, is my understanding.
Councillor Hare?
Just a point of information for members of the executive. My understanding, as a member of the Ali Pali board, it's a point. I mean, you might actually argue I've got a case either way. Just
it's almost 10 o'clock, so the decision has been made not to proceed with the submission. So can we move on to the next item on the agenda? Thank you.
Hopefully, we'll be quick on this and the following items. The 15 is, where is it? is the submission of the first review of the local development scheme. This is now a requirement for this to be submitted. What it does is to bring together all the local planning policies, and it's this process which will subsequently replace the UDP in terms of setting the planning strategy and policies into the future.
Any comments to that, or can we agree? Agreed. Next item.